General William Barr is expected to release more of the special counsel's report in the coming weeks. But despite the ongoing fight to make it public, there are already signs both parties are shifting focus to other issues. CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid reports.
President Trump continued his victory lap on Capitol Hill today.
The Mueller report was great. It could not have been better.
Republican senators who ate lunch with the president described him as in a good mood and rejuvenated, even as Democrats demanded to see the full Mueller report by April 2nd.
Impeachment is not on the table until it is on the table, so it's not a question of that.
But both parties also tried to move on today, turning the page to health care.
The Republican Party will soon be known as the party of health care.
In a court filing last night, the president's Justice Department wrote the entire Affordable Health Care Act should be struck down. That's a shift from just months ago when the administration argued some parts of Obamacare, including the expansion of Medicaid, could remain in place.
Republicans will always protect Americans with pre-existing conditions.
Today, Speaker Pelosi welcomed the change.
This is actually an opportunity for us to speak to the American people with clarity. They say one thing and they do another.
And Democratic lawmakers announced a new bill to restore parts of Obamacare already gutted by the administration.
I'm introducing legislation to help reduce premiums for those who purchase private health plans through the marketplace.
The White House has not put forth a plan to replace Obamacare, but Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said health care was the first topic President Trump addressed at their lunch.
We got to get pre-existing conditions. We got to prove to everybody that if they get sick, they're not going to lose their coverage.
And Paula Reid joins us now from the White House. Hi, Paula. What could overturning the Affordable Care Act mean for Democrats in 2020?
Well, if the Supreme Court were to take up this case, they would likely probably decide it sometime next year. And if they decided to overturn Obamacare after twice upholding it as constitutional, well, that could be a win for Democrats because many people would be impacted, their coverage would change, and that could potentially help Democrats in the 2020 presidential election. It would likely be a reaction against Republicans who would push to overturn the law. But a lot would have to happen, Tanya, between now and then to get to that scenario. Right now, the Justice Department is just asking the Fifth Circuit, a mid-level court, to take up this case. If the Fifth Circuit took up this case, if they agreed that now, following the GOP's tax bill, that Obamacare is now sort of unsustainable, unconstitutional, the Supreme Court would have to decide whether they even want to hear the case. And again, they've already been through this twice, and it's unclear whether Chief Justice Roberts and the other justices would be willing to take another look at Obamacare following these changes in the tax law.
Okay, Paula, so clearly Obamacare is not a point of agreement between both parties. Are there any health care issues that both parties might get together and see eye to eye on?
Prescription drugs, the prices, that could be an area of common ground. It's very hard to find any sort of bipartisan consensus on anything in this town. But right now it was clear the one thing that the two sides agreed on was that they'd much rather talk about health care than talk about the Mueller report.
All right. So, Paula, speaking of, Democrats are fighting for the release of the full Mueller report. What is their strategy here?
They want to see this evidence. Mueller laid out the fact that there were evidence on both sides of the question about obstruction. I'm sure the Democrats would like to pour over evidence related to collusion, but it appears special counsel Robert Mueller came to a definitive answer on that. There was no collusion, even though Russians did interfere in the election. But they want to dig in on this question of obstruction because Mueller could not come to an answer there. The report specifically states, or the summary of the report specifically states, that Mueller had 2 columns of evidence. And Democrats, they want to take a look at that because here you have a Republican experienced prosecutor, Robert Mueller, who looked at that set of facts and couldn't come to an answer. Then the Attorney General, also an experienced Republican prosecutor, looked at the same set of facts and said, nope, I have the answer. There is not sufficient evidence of obstruction of justice. So Democrats clearly think there is some wiggle room here, and they want to offer their own interpretation.
And we know that they do want to hear from Robert Mueller directly. If he is subpoenaed, how much will he be able to discuss in his testimony?
I am told that he is expected to cooperate if he is subpoenaed. We have rarely heard from special counsel Robert Mueller. I don't know if he would be sort of an open book, willing to testify freely about anything that the Attorney General had already made public, or if he would be more reticent and just not answer as extensively as he could. I think we saw that. I remember when you covered Attorney General Loretta Lynch. She could sit through a whole hearing of 5 or 6 hours and say no comment 15 different ways. We just don't know enough about the special counsel, Robert Mueller, and how he would behave in this setting to really say. There would certainly be legal restrictions on him, but a lot of this performance in these hearings, it really depends on the individual and how much they want to reveal to the public through their own testimony. So far, Robert Mueller has preferred to speak through his legal documents.
And Paula, we know, of course, 2020 is looming on the horizon. How can we expect President Trump to use the findings of the Mueller report ahead of 2020?
He's using this as a victory lap to show everyone, ha, I told you this was a witch hunt. This is some sort of deep state conspiracy. There are people who are trying to oust me and sort of undermine a legitimate election and what you wanted and what you voted for. You see, to rally his supporters. But of course, the actual results of the Mueller investigation are a little more nuanced. While he was cleared on the question of collusion, the report did conclude that Russia interfered in the election, and that's something that the president has never formally recognized. He split with his intelligence officers on that, and there's also this open question about whether or not he obstructed justice. So it appears, based on today, even though the president likes to sort of do this victory lap and take some shots at people who focused a lot on this or people who were involved in this investigation, he seems to recognize that it's probably best to move on to other topics, because most voters are not going to vote up and down on this administration based on the Mueller report. They're going to vote based on pocketbook issues, specifically health care.
All right. Paula Reid at the White House, thank you very much.